Welcome to Planet Poet Words in Space. I'm your host, Sharon Israel, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the show two poets of the West, Tim Hunt and Gerald Wagoner. Tim and Gerald will read from their work and discuss their journeys in poetry. Hi, Tim. Hi, Gerald.
Hello.
Hello.
Great to have you here. And for everybody, I'm going to read your bios. Tim Hunt is the author of 6 collections of poetry, most recently Western Wear, Broadstone Books. Recognitions include the Main Street Rag Poetry Book Award for his 2018 collection, Ticket Stubs Liner Notes, 6 Pushcart Prize Nominations, and the Chester H. Jones National Poetry Award for Lake County Diamond from his first collection, Fault Lines, the Backwaters Press. His critical work includes 2 studies of Jack Kerouac and the collected poetry of Robinson Jeffers. Originally from the hill country of Northern California, Tim was educated at Cornell University and concluded his teaching career at Illinois State University, where he was University Professor of English. He and his wife, Susan, live in Normal, Illinois. Here's Gerald Wagoner's biography. Gerald Wagoner is the author of When Nothing Wild Remains, Broadstone Books, September 2023, and A Month of Someday, Indolent Books, March 2023. Gerald's childhood was divided between Eastern Oregon and Montana, where he was raised under the doctrine of benign neglect. With a BA in creative writing from the University of Montana, Gerald pursued the art of sculpture and left the Northwest to study with Richard Stankiewicz in 1982 after earning an MFA in sculpture. Gerald moved to Brooklyn, New York, where he exhibited regularly, then taught art and English for the New York City Department of Education until 2017, at which time he chose to pursue the art of poetry. Selected publications include Beltway Quarterly, Big City Lit, Blue Mountain Review, the Maryland Literary Review, and many others. So you've both left the West to come East. So I'm gonna jump right in and ask you to start reading. And Gerald, would you read for us Rear View Mirror?
Certainly. Rear view mirror. In this Oregon Scablands town, out a creekside street lined with chestnut trees that drop green mace-like seed pods, medieval vicious when hurled. This single-story wood frame house, extant. Its roof and porch square enough, but not like the yard's slouch weeping cedar, true. Behind the shadowed screen door, June-bright dogs bark at the neglected roses that weave a short bed red forward into lattice and chain link, while a ball-bellied man, island shirt unbuttoned, counts the strangers who will upgrade with a tamale truck, the vacant lot doubling as temple. 60 years ago, I tell him, a coal stove in his kitchen was winter lights. A wind-hued wash of paints, gray and wan yellow. See? The snow measures here the negative spaces in the still night's disquiet.
That's Gerald Wagoner reading his poem, Rear View Mirror. The poem title tells a lot about the poem, Gerald. Rear View Mirror. You talk about the past and the near present. Could you talk a little bit about that?
The past and the near present.
Well, whatever you'd like to say about the poem title.
Well, that particular visit to that town was Heppner, Oregon, and my brother and I were on a summer road trip. Went back to where we had lived when we were small, and kind of surprised to find the house still there. Forgotten how small it was.
And you said that you described Payne's Gray That's a color. It's a particular color.
Yes, you can buy a tube of it in watercolor. Winsor Newton makes a nice Payne's gray. It's a kind of icy, it's a cooler gray than Davies gray. It's a brand name basically. But yeah, it's good for watercolor, and if you want a kind of cold feeling, in the sky, it's good sky.
You talk about the scablands. Could you say a little bit about what they are for us that
Um,
come from that area?
yeah, back in the Ice Age, there was a huge lake called Lake Missoula that was held together by an ice dam, and it broke all at once, and all that water washed toward the Pacific and just literally scoured the land in between. Uh, Took it right down to the volcanic basalt that lay below it, and so there's a lot of basalt visible, and there's farming, but you know it's tough. The soil is thin, I think.
It's tough. Yeah, it sounds
Um,
it was created from violence.
yeah,
The chestnut trees. I There are forest rangers who have a show on WIOX, and they were talking about how the chestnut trees are almost extinct in the
oh,
country. And you saw when you went for this visit, there were still a lot of chestnut trees.
I think the chestnut trees returned to my memory in the poem.
Okay.
I cannot say for certain that I was looking at chestnut trees at the time, but I remember how it was in 56.
The sort of the ghost of chestnut trees.
The ghost of chestnut. Yeah.
It's a very evocative poem. The stove in the poem is sort of a icon for me, and there's a lot of loss there. Would you just describe briefly, if I'm right or wrong, about the theme of loss in that poem?
I don't know about loss in that poem. I know that when we were, it was like it was kind of static. It's like this was in the I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and it still reminded us like of when we were kids. I mean, a lot of those things were still there. Things had not changed. There hadn't been a lot of not progress is not necessarily a good word, but there hadn't been a lot of change. And my brother never did like the town we ended up moving to in Montana. But as we were leaving, and this is where the title comes from, we're leaving, and he says, "You know, if we hadn't moved to Cutbank, we might still be here."
Thank you, Gerald. And Tim, would you read Silver Mine for us, Tonopah, Nevada?
Silver Mine, Tonopah, Nevada. The twisting dark of the mine seam, receding down into the hillside, a vacancy left by the tons of blasted ore, pickaxed and shoveled, hauled out and smelted into ingots, silver chains and inlaid teeth, wealth, someone's, somewhere else. Here the dark seam and absence twisting away as if the ore had never been, and the men who worked the seam had never been, as if this silence had always been.
Mm. It's Tim Hunt reading Silver Mine, Tonopah, Nevada. Is my pronouncing it
Tonopah,
correctly?
Nevada. Yep.
I was so struck by that dark seam that runs through the poem. It seems to replacing the bright silver that was mined. So, could you tell us a little bit about that part of Nevada and the silver rush that was part of the history?
Yeah, the silver rush in Nevada was the early 1900s. By 1920, it was pretty much played out and playing down. Um, and so it was mining down into the granite. And when you see where the silver ore was, you're looking down into this twisting seam, and some of it's very narrow, and it just recedes down and down into the darkness. So it's literally a dark seam from where the ore had come, where the ore had been drawn from.
Mm. Most people know about
So,
the gold rush, but the silver rush is a little bit more unusual for general knowledge, I believe.
yeah,
The silver rush.
that was a lot of the, the original wealth in Nevada came from silver, some gold. I'm originally from closer to the coast in California in small towns, San Francisco. Um, but my father's family was involved in quicksilver mining, the ore that makes mercury, in California. And when we visited Tonopah, oh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, this poem just sort of developed out of that impression, different form of mining in the West.
It's interesting to me that both of you wrote your poems about 4 or 5 years ago. Well, you traveled to these places 4 or 5 years ago. That's interesting. So you know each other through your publisher. If you
Right.
both want to talk about that a little bit, how you know each other.
You want to lead, Jerry?
Well, Tim and I have never met in person, uh, but I did blurb his book, which gave me an opportunity to get to know.
And then when Broadstone brought out Jerry's book, or Gerald's book, they also brought out a book by John Daniel, which is a different version of the West. And it struck me that Larry had, within a very short time, published 3 books emphasizing the non-urban West, which is very unusual for a publisher these days. And that kind of led to a little bit of dialogue among the three of us, and my contacting you about possibly being able to be with you on the show.
And thank you for doing that. We talked a little bit in our conversation before the show, the non-urban West. That's an interesting way to put it.
Well, when people think of the West, they so often think of the past of what that they know through fantasy cowboy movies.
Hmm.
And then the current West is San Francisco, LA,
True.
Seattle, and Silicon Valley. And that leaves out a lot of territory, a lot of people, and some very important aspects of the West. So that's, I think, what Jerry and I differently, in our different ways, are somewhat speaking from.
I mean, the working people of the West, the general life of the ordinary person, not the John Ford version of the West.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Let's go on with some more poems. Gerald, would you read another poem for us?
Yes. Would you like Swaths of Stars?
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Swaths of Stars, is a pantoum, which is form, so it has certain kinds of repetitions. Swaths of Stars. I bought a fry bread taco that brisk afternoon, certain I came here to end something. Some poems are traumas in need of triage. I don't know the number of nights I lay certain I was now at the end of something clear that flows down from mountain snow. You don't know the number of nights I lay swallowing galactic swaths of cold stars that float down from mountain snow to lie awake in lakes on still crisp nights. I swallowed single galactic swaths of stars to smuggle back a batch of cold comfort. They lie awake in lakes on still crisp nights, unaware that landlocked salmon are there to smuggle back batches of cold comfort before wolfing it down under big city sky. Unaware that landlocked salmon were there, I bought a fat fry bread taco that afternoon, wolfed it down beneath the bright city sky. Some poems are traumas in need of triage.
It's Gerald Wagoner reading his poem Swath of Stars. I like you go from the fry bread taco to the swath of stars, consuming them. I was so struck by the image of the stars on
Right.
the sea, resting on if that's the right interpretation. It's It's wonderful. I would think that traumas are in need of poems, or triage are in need of poems, but you do the up. Could you explain that a little bit? Some poems or traumas in need of
It's
triage.
hard to explain, but if I'm not copying out, when I wrote that line, I liked the way it sounded. I mean, there's always, when I was looking back, there's always something there that's not really spoken about. There's a feeling, and this was like a return after I've been living in the East, living in Brooklyn, New York for a long time. I don't get to see stars.
Well, this poem is not in need of triage. That's all I can say. Tim Hunt, would you read parts 1 and 21? This is a longer poem in This America.
Sure. So 2016, the middle of the presidential campaign, my father has a serious heart attack, and I'm driving down from Washington, trying to get down to help him with his health. And I was annoyed, frustrated at the political rhetoric, which seemed to miss the point of things and to exploit people rather than engage them. And I started jotting these things in the car as I was driving, and so that's the occasion for it. 2016 is the origin of these, and they're not explicitly political, so I will relieve people of that concern. But in this America, number 1, in this America, deer is not game and squirrel is to eat. Here, hunger is never in season or out of, but is. In this place, the game warden knows who hunts for game and those who hunt for food. And just one quick bit, my great-grandfather was the game warden for a while, or he was actually, I'm sorry, the justice of the peace. And he was named to that role because they trusted him to allow you to hunt if you needed food out of season. But if you were busted as a game sports hunter out of season, he'd nail you. So that's the occasion for that's the gist of, or the origin of that poem. In this Americas, set in Bend, Oregon, an older cousin of mine who's been a cowboy, a wildfire fighter, and God knows what all else, is complaining about all the people coming up from California ruining Bend, Oregon. And his daughter leaned over as he's drinking his coffee and says, "But Daddy, that's how we make our living." And this poem sort of is an attempt to capture that dynamic. 21. In this America, the woman in the stiletto boots and designer jeans with acrylic stitching like tattoos on her perfect Pilates ass, and that silk blouse all bordello frill and cute cowboy hat has moved here to be authentic. As if Dale Evans bought her costumes in Paris and didn't know the difference between the ranch and movie set. Sipping her latte, she gazes through the plate glass. The hills are like a painting. She imagines horses running, sun-dappled and sleek. She likes the painting. She doesn't like you. Your boots work-worn, your truck work-worn, you work-worn. She likes the picture better without you. She wishes you'd move away. But where could you go? In this America that is her America, the one that no longer seems yours.
That's Tim Hunt reading In This America, parts 1 and 21. For those who don't know, Dale Evans was the partner of Roy Rogers, and it's a great line, a very funny line.
Yeah.
About her going to Paris. Maybe she did go to Paris. I mean, why not? You know,
You could afford it.
right. But the two parts have a real similarity. For those who hunt in the first part, the difference between those who hunt game and who are hungry, and who are in the second part, pretending to be something or wanting to be something that they're not, faced with the reality of what it is. I don't of what the reality is, and that's from the point of view of the service people who are living in these places. That's like all over the country right now. The discrepancy between the wealthy and people who really work and don't
Right.
pretend. Could you tell us a little bit more about it's a few, you say these in very few words for very large concept. Do you find that this has gotten worse? When did you write this poem?
Oh, I jotted these as I was driving down the road in summer of 2016. So they were tossed off. And then I looked back at them and thought, oh, these aren't too bad. Uh, and I put them together. And in a way, I think that's how they become few words trying to get at larger things, um, for lack of a better term. To me, there's a sense of how many Americas are there,
Yes.
and which one is my America, which one is yours America, your America. It's not clear, and that's why I ended up, I think, with the phrase "in this America," because it's indeterminate as to whose it is and who owns it. And there's a sense in which, and I think, Gerald, you may have this awareness as well, we're from the West, the rural West or the small town West, but we're not contained by it at this point. But it adds a perspective to how we interact with the other Americas that we encounter as we've moved around the country, as we've engaged things through our various arts. And it's an unstable position, and somehow that's what I was trying to get out there into the domain of things. Because if we could recognize that instability, maybe we could talk to each other a little more
Mhm.
usefully.
Gerald, would you like to add to that? I would like to know, you grew up in different geographical and cultural areas. Do you find more similarity than differences in where you grew up? And I'm asking a lot of questions. I like, Tim, when you said it's either rural America or small town, I mean, rural West or small town West, which I think says more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Tim says, these small towns that we remember, many of them, well, there's a poem coming up, right? Uh, they shrink. They, they have gotten smaller. Cars go by faster.
Right. The places that you return to, however, for me, my life, that they assume a more mythic proportion, even though they shrink in action in physical or. Thank you both. You're listening to Planet Poet Words in Space on WIOX Community Radio. I'm your host, Sharon Israel, and I'm here with poets and writers Tim Hunt and Gerald Wagoners, poets whose work beautifully evoke the United States West and small town West and rural West and non-urban West. I'll just add that. Tim, would you read Still Life, Barbed Wire with Tumbleweeds, Owens Valley, California?
Sure. And maybe here too, just one little detail ahead of the poem. In 1913, the city of LA managed to poach the water of the Owens Valley, somewhat to the north of it, um, to provide the water for LA. It desiccated the Owens Valley, and some people may know the movie Chinatown. That's backstory for that film. So, Still Life, Barbed Wire with Tumbleweeds, Owens Valley, California. There was water here once. orchards and farms, the Sierras rising off to the west, before the lake was drained to flush the toilets in LA, that feat of engineering. And the farms dried up and the orchards failed, and most of the people moved on. That is the way of things here in the West. A momentary boom that fails, and most of the people moving on. A few left behind, tumbleweeds, snagged in a fence, rocking in the wind against the strands of barbed wire.
That's Tim Hunt reading Still Life, Barbed Wire with Tumbleweeds, Owens Valley, California. I like the phrase to flush the toilets in LA. I mean, it's got good rhythm to it also. It says so much. And I was surprised to hear that it was the basis of Chinatown, which publicized this dilemma. But it's still going on, this poaching.
Oh, yeah.
Big time. Why do you call this poem a still life, Tim?
It's kind of like a documentary photograph.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a still life in that sense. But also, I think life in the sense of being snagged in that
Yes.
fence is still a kind of life. So it's a still life, and as if this were a visual piece, which it's not really. I understand that. And Gerald, you can obviously school me on that point. Um, but it's also the assertion that there is still life, and these are the conditions.
Right. It's very imagistic also. The barbed wire, it's just very evocative of the piercing of life in this area and how it was just destroyed. And Gerald, would you read The Loss of Two Dot for us?
I'm going to comment that some still lifes have
Yes.
a bird in them.
Have a what? A
Have
bird?
a bird in them.
Okay.
So, yeah, the loss of Two Dot. From the found, it's got a little extra thing to the title, "The Loss of Two Dot," which is from its founding, the name has been spelled both ways. That means like as Two Dot and Two Dot. Most Montanans know there is a town named Two Dot. Few Montanans know where it is. Even fewer Montanans know that Two Dot is dead. The Two Dot Post Office, the Two Dot Foods, the Two Dot Bar with its big white letters on blue sign, all closed. That's what better cars and better highways do to all the Two Dots. Coming from White Sulphur Springs, why turn off for a Two Dot when Harlowtown is only 20 minutes and you think they still have a gas station?
That's Gerald Wagner reading The Loss of Two Dot, which is spelled two ways, the two dot, and two dot. What's the origin of the name Two Dot?
It was the brand of a rancher, big rancher, who kind of ended up creating Two Dots. So it was named after him, but his brand was Two Dots.
I mean, two visual dots.
Yes, it's a cattle brand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I gotta clarify that. You burn a
Yes.
Sure.
brand into the haunch of a cow and makes it yours.
Two Dot.
Yeah, he just
I find it so interesting that the poem, you describe the towns and this town that is to the reader probably most equally obscure as Two Dot. And that's kind of very funny. Maybe there's still a gas station there. And can you talk to you if you agree with me about the cinematic quality of this poem?
dramatic quality, the visual spread
Yes,
of
the visual.
yeah. Two Dot is tiny. I mean, when I said the bank, the post office, the bar, and that's all there was, one of each. And it's in like central Montana. There's a lot of Montana in all directions around it. It's flattish, but there are these places where um I guess it's the story that is there, that it's gone. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, we were talking about Two Dot, and like nobody I knew had ever been there, or like somewhere over, So in that respect, it was, and the only reason we stopped there was my friend was hoping to get a replacement for the Two Dot Tavern hat that he had lost. And so we drove there and it was like there was nothing anymore. They were just signs on empty stores.
That's a great reason for going, though. That's a great reason to travel with a specific goal in mind. Gerald, how does your sculpture influence your poetry, if it does, and vice versa?
Well, I haven't been doing much sculpture for quite a while. It requires a certain amount of space. But I think I could talk about this. To me, there's a similarity in some ways between sculpture and poetry in that they are dimensional. Poems, when I talk about a poem, I can like it's got these like four-dimensional elements. It's got its form, it's got its imagery, it's got its music, and it's got its content, and these all are kind of working together, which makes it a thing. And also, like, if you do assembly sculpture, you can take pieces out and put them back in, and you keep arranging pieces
Yes.
that come together. And poems are like that. You arrange pieces until they come together and make a satisfying whole of some sort.
I think William Carlos Williams said that a poem is a machine made out of words, which is really just what you've described. Both of you are, that's my romanticized version of your lives, which I really know nothing about. But do you consider yourselves exiles from the West, like Joyce or Beckett from Ireland? Do you feel that way?
I don't, but I left on purpose.
Hmm.
I didn't have the teachers that I wanted there,
Hmm.
and so I came east to find the teachers that I wanted. Oh. But exile, not so much. When I go back, I realize how much I love it, especially like going back to Montana and certain places which are not, where they're flat and empty, and all of a sudden it's like, God, this is really beautiful, flat and empty. When I was a teenager, it was like, get me out of here. Oh my God, who left me at the end of the world? And all the things I hated are all the things I love now.
Well, once you're in Brooklyn for a while, it gets your perspective changes
Perspective changes.
in many ways that we don't have time to talk about. Tim, how about you?
Well, I'm somewhat the opposite here of Gerald. I left the West by accident. I managed to get myself in a way that I hadn't intended into a university in the Northeast. And I left at 17 for some place that I thought was called Ithaca, New York. And when I got there, it turns out it wasn't and isn't. Uh, so my my relationship to the East and the West was somewhat shaped by that encounter, shall we say. Uh, but I think everybody who's Anglo-European American in the West is in some level, in some sense, in exile. Um, and if you leave the West, which we've both done, you're better able to recognize that than you are when you're there. And to me, that just raises a larger question, which is how do we relate to place more generally, and the sort of temporary constructions of any community or society, because we think of things that we knew as a child and we imagine they're permanent. And of course, we're old enough now to know how much they are not. And so the whole notion of exile to me is more involved with that. How do we understand the transitory nature of the various worlds we inhabit.
Hmm. Thank you.
Well said, Tim.
Yes, yes. So more poetry now. How about Gerald? Would you read Snow Slip Bar and Cafe?
No slip bar and cafe. Behind double barbed wire fences, the bulk of the tribal bison herd grazes on silence. Excuse me. The rest gaze west toward the Rockies. That late afternoon at Snow Slip, he leaned, left arm behind, back against the far end of a short bar, and a Siksika, glass raised, greeted me friend. I race horses, thoroughbreds, he said. I have a master's degree, he said. I teach phys ed in Browning, he said. I've been assimilated. I'm Catholic, star school, but I'm not. I'm Pekingese. Did you ever take a sweat? It's good to take a sweat. My boy is 8. He cries and I hug him. The medicine man said it was the video games. We all took a sweat. My boy is stronger now. Do you still sometimes make the crow cry? I asked him. Oh, we win so much they don't invite us to their games no more, he said. But the Flathead over at Kalispell have all the banners now. I tell the boys, we are the runners, not the Flathead. Have pride. It's summer. My uncle and me, we race horses in the summer. I don't drink. I drank yesterday. I drink today, he said. My wife called me, he said. Come home, she said. I miss you. The boys miss you. Well, the horses need me too. I came home, he said. The door was locked. You know, he said, when we go to the massacre site to pray, the farmer charges us to cross his land.
It's Gerald Wagoner reading Snow Slip Bar and Cafe. Powerful. Is this it sounds like a real dramatic dialogue to me. Did you overhear some conversation when you wrote this?
I was part of the conversation. I literally did walk. This place sounds remote and obscure to everyone, and
Yes.
yet it's a place I'm familiar with. It's right off. It's in Cutbank, Montana. When we moved there, if you drive west down the hill and across the river, you're on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation all the way to Glacier Park. And I had been fishing all afternoon, and I put my thing away and went in to get a drink, and there he was just with his uncle and and we just sat and talked for a couple hours. I had been interested for a long time thinking about sound, the way people speak,
Yes.
and especially the way the Native Americans that I knew spoke, their rhythm, their emphasis on things. Like for example, and also, I was going to say, when he says, "I don't drink," I drank yesterday, I drink today. That means I'm not a drunk. It's the guy what is a or was a teacher. He does have a master's degree from college in Montana. He's a real three-dimensional human being that we actually hung out and talked. We talked for a while, but he gave me the perfect ending.
Ah,
That's a direct quote from him. It's one of the
that the farmer charges him
charges us to cross his
across the
land.
land.
The Baker, it's called the Marias Massacre, 1872, January 20th, dawn, 20 degrees below zero. They fired on it was the wrong band. They didn't care. They just fired on Muslim and children.
You captured the rhythm of the speech is quite remarkable. And the matter-of-fact way that the speaker says, yeah, we're gonna go over to the massacre site. And what did he say he was going to do? Just
There is annually a bunch of them from Browning, which is the administrative center of the reservation, go over to where the massacre site took place.
there's a lot of emotion in that poem. That's because it's just dialogue. It's implied. It comes through. I wanted to talk to both of you about the covers of your books. Gerald, does this poem reflect the tribal bison herd?
Well, the tribal bison herd on the cover is the Blackfoot tribe owns they own a bison herd. And they some days when you're driving by, they're right up next to the highway. You drive by, there's this whole herd of bison. Some days they're not there at all. It's a big field.
It's a great cover. And Tim, talk about your cover a little bit.
Well, the background photo is one my wife snapped while we were at Tonopah that day, and the image of the younger woman in the cowgirl outfit from the 30s is one of my aunts, and Annie Sue, as it happens, who actually played with her grandfather in a band in Northern California, and our son, who's a visual artist, put that together, and I really appreciate Larry allowing us to have that much role in the cover, because I think it kind of helps lock the collection together.
It's great.
I
Beautiful.
want to add real quickly, Jerry, I love that last poem that you read. And I was thinking as you were finishing it, you were talking earlier about being a visual artist as well as a poet. And of course, part of the art of the visual artist is knowing what to put in the frame and where. And that poem does it very deftly, especially that ending.
Beautifully said. Tim, please read Still Life with Steam Tractor and Quarter Horses
Okay.
and Coda Rodeo Ride. Would you like to read them one after another or separate, or we can talk about them separately? Go together.
I'll read them together. They're obviously two
Okay.
different pieces, even though there's a rodeo in both.
Mhm.
Still Life with Steam Tractor and Quarter Horses. The past is a place, and each time you go there, things will be the same. The steam tractor left to rust in the field, the front wheel angled to the left as if turning to plow another row of wheat. A few bushels, not enough to sell, but bread on the table with the summer's canning. The field is empty now, or rather set out with poles and barrels, and each day after school, someone's girls gallop the two quarter horses, dreaming of being rodeo stars, the blue ribbons and trophy cups that would mean they're special, would mean they are. Rodeo ride. And actually, I should probably preface this with one quick comment. In rodeo, the rodeo clown is a figure who jumps out of a barrel to distract the bull so that the person riding the bull who's been thrown can crawl away to safety. It's the most dangerous job in the rodeo, and the one that people don't understand. And when I wrote this poem, I was playing with those kind of faux folk sayings that you see inscribed on plaques at flea markets. And this one just kind of kept going, and I wrote it, shall we say, out to the end. Ride your past, don't let it ride you. Life's a rodeo, stay on the bull long as you can. And when you're thrown, get up out of the dirt, look for the clown and move. Then ride again soon as your bones will let you. Bones matter, but bones ain't heart.
That's wonderful. That's Tim Hunt reading two poems, one after the other. Still Life with Steam Tractor and Quarter Horses. And it's called Coda and then Rodeo Rider. That's the last That's the last poem in your collection?
Yes.
Yes. The rodeo stanza in Still Life, which is very poignant about those girls dreaming of being rodeo stars, sort of contradicts the reality of what the rodeo is. I've never heard of a rodeo clown, and that is crazy. That's like worse than the court jester in King Henry VIII's court. It's much more dangerous, or equally dangerous in different ways. But with
Those
this,
clowns will climb back in the barrel, and the bull will knock the barrel around.
that's unbelievable. That, and it's they're so unsung. So you sang for them, Tim. But the first poem, The Still Life, Another Still Life, it reminded me of Frost when he describes the scythe and mowing and the red wheelbarrow. I don't know if you consciously did that in that tradition with that, and I will say lavish detail that you use in that poem. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think with the Red Wheelbarrow, that famous William Carlos Williams poem, what Williams is doing is extracting the visual element and freezing it. And I'm more interested in what Frost is doing, although I wasn't thinking of Frost in this poem, which is connecting to the rhythms of work or the rhythms of the ordinary day.
Mhm.
And so, that's of course a tradition that goes back at least to Wordsworth. So you can see it through many different poems and poets, but definitely more akin to Frost in this case than Williams. Though as a younger man, I love Williams much more than Frost. Oh well. So don't know if that helps at all or not.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Frost is an extremely complicated poet.
He is.
This has been wonderful conversation. Thank you, Tim and Gerald. You want to talk about any upcoming events that you may have?
I will talk about my poetry series, Persistence of Cormorants. I curate and host a poetry series in the warm months here in New York, in Brooklyn. There's a canal not far from my house,
Is it the Gowanus Canal?
Kiwanis Canal,
Yes.
which is, uh, and
Oh, great.
because what have I got? Like 16, 15 more. I scheduled 20 this season, which means I'm hosting close to 90 poets.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I do four at a time, and then I've got a couple places where I just like let people fill them up a little bit more, that it kind of like gets so I don't have to I don't know, yeah, it's a regular thing. It's like this is my fifth season doing that.
Congratulations. That's great. And Tim, what's coming up for you?
I don't have anything on tap. So I'll just say to anyone listening to the program, they might remember the old Western show, Paladin, where the motto was "Have gun, will travel."
Half gun will travel.
There you go.
Dum dum dum.
Dum, da, dum. So have poem will travel. So anyway, always enjoy reading when I get the chance.
How come nobody back in those days when we were kids knew that a paladin was a knight?
Didn't know that. Didn't know that.
No.
But it was great. It was a great show. Half Gun Will Travel.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Tim Hunt and Gerald Wagoner. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for
Really,
having us.
really appreciate it. And thank you all for listening.